Hi, it's Gareth at Switch It Off and On again. It's been a while since the last video. We're in a all new location. I've got specs and slightly longer hair, but we're still here to give you a no frills set of opinions about all things IT service management. And Switch It Off and Honors, that's your new nickname, viewers, by the way. We need to talk about the CMDB. Ask yourself this question: how would you rate the CMDB within your IT department? Be that the structure of it, the data contained within, or how it's used. Do you even have a CMDB? And if so, do you find it that it makes managing your IT services easier as a result? I'm pretty sure for a lot of you, I might know the answer to that question. There's not a company I think I've worked for that's been satisfied that their CMDB is a truly valuable asset to their IT function, and in fact, to the business as a whole. It seems like most people in IT recognise the need for a CMDB, but more often than not, those four letters are used as a scapegoat for why things often go wrong. Yet on the other hand, whilst lots of organisations aren't happy with the state of their CMDB, they function. They're able to provide and support services to their consumers. So how big a deal can it be not having a well-managed CMDB? Is it just a luxury that frankly most organisations can live without? I've had the fortune of working with or for lots of companies over the years, and whenever those four magical letters get brought up, it's often followed by comments like, the data in our CMDB isn't very good, there's too much information in there, no one really manages it, it's a mess, we haven't got one. Well, when it comes to the CMDB, well, with most things service management actually, I don't think there is a silver bullet in being able to address any CMDB challenges that you have. There's not some magic plugin you can apply to your ITSM tooling that with a few clicks of the wizard, ta-da, nice remediated CMDB in your hands. Alas, it's back to some good old IT advice: iterate with feedback, keep it simple, optimize and automate these sorts of challenges. I think this approach is much more appropriate than trying to address the challenge of a CMDB like a delivery project. As we'll talk about, the management of the data in your CMDB should be woven into your processes, your culture, how you do service management, not just implemented as a one-time exercise that then deteriorates over time, leading you back to where you started. Maturing your CMDB and how it's used takes time, and it's an activity that doesn't have a finish line. It needs constant care and attention. However, the path to get started does have an identifiable start line, and let me tell you, it's got nothing to do with a database. Okay, so let's talk about why we need a CMDB in the first place. Well, to allow us to manage, track, report against all of those things that we need to in order to provide services to customers. We need to be able to collate the information about how all of these things are combining and coexisting so that we can do things like understand the environment that IT supports, understand how the services are performing to enable the business to operate, impact assess any potential changes or reported incidents, understand the cost of IT services to the organisation. The CMDB isn't, or at least shouldn't, just be an inventory of all of the laptops, the servers, the apps, the switches that IT have to manage. The essential element is the relationship these things have to deliver services to the business. Simply put, the structure, the service architecture. A service architecture isn't complex, or at least it needn't be. It simply outlines to the organisation what services are offered, how they are related and interact in order to support the overall business process. And this should be the starting point when it comes to your CMDB. What are the services that you provide to your business? These will be comprised of things like application services that support business processes, for example, a HR platform that allows you to book annual leave. Services provided to specific sites or locations that allow for the running of technology services like network connectivity, things provided to end users, their user accounts, their machines. It's essential to understand too who is consuming what services, which locations, which business units or departments, so you can measure the effectiveness, cost and impact accordingly. Now I would opt for the good old 80-20 rule. Given that many IT departments will have some old legacy skeletons knocking about, that old mainframe that's been kept alive to run a report once a year, that old version of Adobe Editor that only 2 users rely on. I'm not saying those things aren't important, but let's aim for breadth of coverage. Let's aim to ensure we've got about 80% of the things covered that our users call the desk about. And when we start to capture these things, naturally other things will float to the top, come out of the woodwork. It doesn't need to be perfect, it just needs to be accurate and purposeful. Once we're confident we've got those services defined and understand who uses them, we can then start to understand and define those technical services that combine and integrate to make up those services our consumers consume. Those technical services themselves may be comprised of multiple things, multiple configuration items we need to manage in order to deliver those services. Then in time, we should also look to include any dependencies we have on third-party services provided to us in support of us delivering our services. What are those services? Who provide them to us? What are the service levels attributed to them? Now, hold on. This already sounds like we're starting to define an architecture that's going to result in us capturing, holding, managing a load of data. And I thought you said we should start small and iterate, right? And that's absolutely correct. This is an iterative journey. And I would always only ensure you're including something in your CMDB structure that you need to manage specifically. You shouldn't set out to map the entire world just to the point that afterwards the information stops being useful. Now, for example, I think of it a bit like our house. If I had to analogize, and you know I like doing that, let's think of my house as the environment and my family are the consumers of services within that environment. Now, one service may be bathroom services, the ability to shower, go to the toilet, brush your teeth. So in my service architecture, I may include bathroom services as a service. Now, we have 2 bathrooms in our house, one upstairs, one downstairs. Given that the ladies in the house use the one upstairs and I use the one downstairs, it may be beneficial for us to differentiate in our architecture that we have 2, and we can map which business departments in effect are using those. When guests come round and may want to use that service, I can highlight that there are 2 for them to use. However, they may find the upstairs one unavailable during the evening when Mrs. Farr likes to take her evening bath. Now, from a service consumer perspective, that might be enough information for us to hold. We can define the service, where it can be accessed from, and when. Now, in managing that service, those bathrooms are going to be comprised of a shit ton of different components. The floor, the walls, the ceiling, the shower cubicle, toilet, sink, taps, pipework, individual tiles, towel rack, and so on. So how much of this stuff should I include in my theoretical house CMDB? And that's where it becomes more art than science, only to the point after which the information stops being useful. Back to my example, let's say there's a need for us to change the taps on the upstairs sink. This is getting weird. I could list them individually, but I'm not going to change one without changing the other. So I'm going to categorise them as an upstairs bathroom sink tap CI. I'm going to record where I bought them from, perhaps the make and model. If there's an issue with them, I might call the store. They may want this info. Or I might decide that I need some more for the other bathrooms and I'll order the same model. I'm also going to record when I installed them, and probably that's it. That's enough information for that CI. I'm certainly not going to go down to the level of recording every single element that makes up each tap. Why? Because it provides no value in doing so. What could I do with that information that's going to help me? Now, when I've raised a change against the upstairs bathroom taps, I would know during that period the upstairs sink and the upstairs bathroom service is going to be partially unavailable, and I can reliably inform any service consumers of potential disruption. Now, again, I need to make sure my service architecture is of suitable detail so that it's useful. Too broad, and again, it might not serve any value. In that example, given the level of detail I've gone to, I could communicate whilst I'm changing the taps upstairs, the bathroom downstairs remains in use. Just because I'm doing something to the bathroom service, I'm not rendering the whole bathroom service unusable. If I make a complete hash of the job, which given my DIY skills is high in probability, I can easily impact assess only the upstairs bathroom sink will be impacted, not the entire bathroom service, and again allowing me to coordinate and manage accordingly. Going back to a real life example, I joined a company some years ago, and in my first week I joined a cab session, and one of the changes that came through, the config item associated to the change was simply listed as server. I asked, did we only have one? To which a few people sniggered at the new boy in the corner with little technical nous. Clearly we didn't. But from a change impact assessment, saying we're changing a server, well, that provides no benefit in being able to impact assess what server, what service does that support, who might be impacted. The requester may as well have left the field blank. That record of server in the CMDB, completely useless. Again, we should be totally clear why we have a service architecture mapped into the CMDB in the first place. Hopefully you get the idea. So to conclude, and without sounding like a broken record, start off very simply by defining your service architecture. Picking on one particular ITSM provider, ServiceNow, they have produced an excellent approach to defining a service architecture within your CMDB, which they've branded the Common Services Data Model. Whilst the white paper they've produced goes into great depth, what they champion is a crawl, walk, run, fly approach. This is really sensible, and those companies I've worked for that do utilise their CMDB effectively 100% adopt this approach. I've worked with companies who, as I said, approach their CMDB maturity with a very waterfall project-orientated approach. Perhaps go and license themselves up to the eyeballs for a CMDB capability with all the discovery bells and whistles without really giving thought into how the information is going to be routinely updated, added to and managed. You have to ask yourself, what am I putting this data in for? What's it going to be used for? How will it be managed? What purpose does it serve? Too many people think they can go from a standing start to fly on day one. Simply put, I don't think you can. You can buy all the technology available to go and dynamically map your environment, but if you don't understand how that data is used and maintained, that effort is only providing a snapshot in time. Maintaining the data in your CMDB means your processes have to innately support that, which if they're not today means a level of process change, business change, behavioural change, which while certainly doable, does require persistent effort, support, measurement and coaching. My last piece of sage advice for today, be clear on your boundaries too, especially when it comes to holding information on those third-party services your services rely on. Remember, the CMDB is there to hold information about the config items, asset services you need to manage. Now, I worked for an infrastructure service provider in the past, and we provided our customers with a fully managed infrastructure service. One of our customers was adamant that they wanted details of how our infrastructure hung together in the provision of that service so that they could fully end-to-end map their service dependencies. Now, this is a really dangerous tactic. Dangerous in that from a customer point of view, they shouldn't need to worry about this, much like as your service consumers don't need to worry about the ins and outs of how the services you provide to them hang together. The customer should absolutely understand which of their services is dependent on the service being offered, but in terms of the underlying detail, no way. That's the equivalent in my bathroom services scenario of me needing to know every component Severn Trent manages to get the water from some reservoir in Wales to my house in the West Midlands. I know which other services my bathroom service is dependent on, water being one, and if there's an issue with that service, it's the provider's job to identify and resolve that, not mine. That's what I'm paying for. So to finish, let's remember that definition of service, a means of delivering value to customers by facilitating outcomes customers want to achieve without the ownership of specific costs and risks. Until next time, I've been Gareth at Switch It Off and On Again.